Chapter 2090. Here are the items, Zhuijunue said, and gestured for her to take the items. Fengjiu looked at the items in his hand and put them away with a smile. She sighed softly. I've gained quite a lot from entering the volcano forest. I knew I should come out more often. Look, I've earned a lot. Lao Bai stroked his beard and glanced at her. What do you mean by earning a lot? You're the one who robbed us. He really couldn't tell that this little girl was so capable in this line of work. He really didn't know what this little girl used to do. She put the items away and planned to organize them later. She would keep the useful items and sell the useless ones. Finally, she looked at the two of them. Let's go. It's good that we're out of the forest now. Let's go out on our swords. It should save us a lot of time. Are we really going to the Zhua family? The old man looked at her and asked. Yes, let's go to the Zhua family. She nodded and took the rainbow feather from her waist and threw it into the air. The beautiful feather changed and became bigger with a whoosh. It floated lightly in the air. This treasure is not bad. The old man was surprised. He looked at the beautiful rainbow feather and stroked his beard, asking, This is the rainbow glaze feather, right? I didn't expect a little girl like you to have so many treasures on you. You didn't rob this too, did you? Fengjiu tapped her toes and leaped onto the feather. She sat down cross-legged and said, Are you going or not? If not, I'll go. As soon as she finished speaking, she took the lead and flew high into the air. After passing through the air pressure, she flew even higher and headed out of the forest. Wait for us, the old man shouted and threw out his flying device to chase after her. Zhuijunue summoned his flying sword and followed behind the two of them. However, when they passed through the air pressure, their bodies fell slightly. In the volcanic forest area, the heat in the air formed a pressure, especially in mid-air. The pressure was especially obvious. Ordinary cultivators couldn't fly on their swords under this pressure. Therefore, most of the people who came to the volcanic forest to train were on foot. Another thing was, if they directly flew through the forest on their swords, it wouldn't be considered training. Among them, only those with real strength could withstand the pressure in the air. However, just like Feng Jiayu and the others, they had to step on the aircraft and fly up into the air. They had to break through the air pressure to fly up to a high altitude before they could truly fly on the aircraft. Behind him, Zhuijunue flew with the wind on his flying sword. His gaze was fixed on the green-robed youth who was sitting on the feather. His sleeves were fluttering, and his black hair was fluttering. His hands were casually propped up on the feather behind him, and he looked at ease and contented. He couldn't help but think, she's really a strange person. The more I interact with her these days, the more I feel that she's unfathomable. Whether it's her way of doing things or her strength, she's always exceeded my expectations. The first time they met, she cured his poison, took the teleportation scroll from the old man, and played a trick on the old man. He was so angry that he stomped his feet. When they met again, he heard how she used a trick to save those people. When she dealt with the fiendish cultivators, she was ruthless and merciless. Her clean methods and strength were shocking. Later, they found out that the youth in front of them was actually a woman. Chapter 2091. Thinking of her forceful methods, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. She was probably the only one who could do such a thing. He really didn't know that when his grandfather took her in as a disciple, did he know that she had such a personality? Thinking of his grandfather, he had an indescribable feeling in his heart. On one hand, he felt that there was finally news about the matter that his grandmother wanted him to inquire about. On the other hand, he felt that it was a pity that he could only learn about his grandfather from her. He knew that in his father's heart, this matter had always been on his mind. If his father found out about this, what would he do? At the same time, in a corner of the lobby on the first floor of the Heavenly Pill building in 100 River City, Lung Hua, don't you feel that there's something wrong with Little Fool recently? Du Fan came to Lung Hua's side and asked, gesturing for him to look at the busy figure in front of him. What's wrong? Lung Hua looked at the account book in his hand and asked without raising his head. Everything's wrong. Du Fan took the account book away from his hand and tucked it under his arm, saying, A few days ago, she often went to your side and often called you Big Brother Lung Hua. big brother Lenghua, but now it's like she's treating you like you're transparent. Don't you think it's strange? Also, have you noticed? Why do I feel like she's lost a lot of weight recently? And her face has been pale recently. Could it be that I really went too far last time and she's sick from holding it in? At this point, Du Fan couldn't help but feel a little worried. Little fool, this girl was quite likable. She didn't have any ulterior motives and was also very straightforward. Especially as the daughter of a family, she didn't put on any airs and treated people very sincerely. Although she was smiling every day, he always felt that her smile was a little gloomy. Hearing this, Lenghua looked at the girl who was busy in front of him. He saw that she had indeed lost a lot of weight recently. Her originally round face was now slimmed down to a sharp chin. However, her face seemed to be a little pale, and she did not look as happy as before. I'll talk to her later, Lenghua said, and then when she wants to go back, tell her to go to the backyard. I'll go too. I think I might have said too much last time. Du Fan sighed and felt a little guilty. She was a good girl. If she really took things too hard because of his words, then it would be strange if his master didn't skin him alive when he returned. However, as the two of them were talking, they suddenly heard a cry of surprise coming from the front. Waiter, waiter, what happened to you? The two of them looked towards the front and saw that the busy waiter had suddenly fainted. Fortunately, there was a medicinal maid beside him supporting him so that he didn't fall to the ground. Seeing this, the two of them quickly went forward. Look, I said that there must be something wrong with her. Just as I was saying that, something really did happen. As Du Fan spoke, he anxiously ordered one of the maidservants, Go, tell Fan Lin to go to the backyard. At this time, Lenghua had already gone forward to carry the girl and quickly walked to the backyard. Du Fan followed beside him. Fan Lin, who was on the second floor, also came to the backyard on the first floor after hearing the maidservant's words. As soon as he entered the backyard, he was pulled inside by Du Fan. Come, quickly go and see how that waiter is doing. She suddenly fainted in front of us, and her face is frighteningly pale. Before the master left, he told us to take good care of her. If he came back and saw her like this, it would be strange if he didn't beat us. Chapter 2092. Let's take a look at her first. We'll talk after that. Du Fan dragged him into the room and came to the bedside. He pointed at the unconscious girl on the bed and said, Quick, let's take a look at her. Fan Lin sat down on the chair beside the bed unhurriedly and reached out to check her pulse. After a while, he withdrew his hand and said to the two, What's wrong with her? She's a rich young lady. How did she become malnourished? What? Du Fan was stunned. Lenghua beside him asked, How is she? Why did she faint? She probably didn't eat well. In addition, she used too much energy and has some depression in her heart. It's not a big problem. As long as we give her something to eat when she wakes up, her body will slowly recover. As Fan Lin spoke, he stood up and looked at the two of them. He asked strangely, What kind of work did you give her? How did you make her work too much and use up too much energy? Don't tell me you took advantage of the absence of the master to bully her? How could that be? Du Fan quickly said, Actually, it's like this. He briefly told Fan Lin what happened that day. After hearing Du Fan's words, Fan Lin nodded in realization. I see. No wonder she has depression in her heart. He smiled and stepped forward to pat Lenghua's shoulder. Watch over her for the next 2 days. Give her some medicine. I'll get someone to boil some medicine for her to drink. Didn't you say she was fine? Why does she need to take medicine? Du Fan couldn't help but ask. Open some qi to disperse the depression. The rest will depend on you guys to open her. As Fan Lin spoke, he walked out with large strides. You stay here and watch over her. I'll get someone to boil some ginseng soup and send it over, Lenghua said to Du Fan. He was about to walk out when Du Fan grabbed his hand. Don't. You stay here. I'll take care of this. As Du Fan spoke, he hurriedly walked out without waiting for him to react. However, when he reached the door, he paused and turned back to ask, Oh, right. Xiao'er fainted. Should we get someone to inform her family? Hearing this, Lenghua looked at Xiao'er, who was still unconscious, and said gently, Let's not talk about it for now. We'll talk about it when she wakes up, lest her father gets worried. All right, Then I'll be going, he said, before walking away. Lung Hua was keeping watch in a room. Seeing that the person on the bed hadn't woken up yet, he sat beside him and watched quietly. The door creaked open, and Lung Hua, dressed in black, walked in. Sister. Lung Hua stood up and greeted her. How is she? Lung Shuang looked at the waiter on the bed and asked. She said she didn't eat properly and fainted from hunger. Also, she's depressed, Lung Hua said. Hearing this, Lung Shuang looked at Lung Hua and said, when she wakes up, talk to her. Let her rest well for the next few days and recover her body. Okay, I got it, Lung Hua said. Seeing his sister turn and walk out, he got up and walked her out. After returning to the room and sitting by the bed for a while, Xiao Er slowly woke up. Seeing that she was awake, Lung Hua smiled gently. You're awake? When he saw that she was about to get up, he motioned to her. Just lie down. I'll talk to you for a while. Brother Lung Hua, what's wrong with me? Xiao Er pulled at the quilt. She was a little nervous and restrained. Lung Hua smiled gently. Have you not eaten properly recently? Chapter 2093. Seeing this, Lung Hua looked at her and asked gently, Xiao Er, have you been unhappy recently because you heard what Du Fan said to me? No. She quickly shook her head, afraid that he would misunderstand. Actually, you don't have to be like this. You were originally very good. You don't have to care too much about what others think. Xiao Er narrowed her eyes. She pulled the blanket and didn't speak. She didn't dare to look up at him. Lung Hua didn't say anything else. He just looked at her and asked with a smile, Do you want to know how we followed Master back then? She looked at him in shock. Can I tell you? There's nothing that can't be said. Everyone in the Phoenix Guards knows. However, they only know the general idea and don't know the details. He smiled and said gently, Master is someone who isn't afraid of what the world thinks and isn't bound by the world. You know, back then that he sat by the bed and told her about what happened back then with a gentle voice and a smile on his face. Xiao listened attentively. Her eyes were sometimes filled with amazement and sometimes looked at Lung Hua in disbelief. She looked at the undisguised respect and conviction in his eyes when he talked about his master. She was mesmerized by the light and expression in his eyes. She never knew that they had such a past. She didn't even know that such a thing had happened to them in the past. It was like this back then. Not only did Master change the fate of my brother and sister, she also taught us how to behave and deal with things. We always believed that Master's taste was unique. Someone who could be chosen by her must be special. At this point, he smiled gently and his gentle gaze fell on her face. Not only did Master say that you were very good, but after interacting with you, we all know that you are indeed very good. You really are very good like this. You don't have to change anything. Just follow your heart. Don't give yourself too much pressure. Hearing him say so much, Xiao Er knew that he was trying to enlighten her. She looked at him with some guilt and said softly, Brother Lung Hua, I'm sorry for making you worry. Hearing this, he smiled and asked slowly, Your body is a little weak now. I want you to rest at home for a few days to recover. Do you think that's okay? Then, can I come again in the future? She asked nervously. Of course. He smiled and reached out to stroke her head, saying, You should quickly recover before coming over to help. Seeing him touch her head like a child, she was a little shy and a little happy. She nodded. Well, I will take care of my body as soon as possible. I will eat well when I go back. That's good. Lung Hua nodded. At this moment, he heard the door open. He turned around and saw Du Fan carrying something in. You're awake? Du Fan looked at the waiter on the bed and said with a smile, It's good that you're awake. The food is ready. Come. I'll help you sit up, Lung Hua said, reaching out to help her up. Thank you. She thanked him softly. Perhaps it was because her state of mind had changed, but her appetite had also improved. Smelling the fragrance, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Seeing this, Du Fan and Lung Hua looked at each other and smiled. They brought the things to the small square table beside the bed. Chapter 2094. Hearing this, the waiter smiled sweetly and looked at Lung Hua. Thank you, Brother Lung Hua. Thank you, Brother Du. All right. Hurry up and eat, Du Fan said with a smile. Seeing her happy smile, he said to the two of them, "I'll go to the front and take a look first." As he spoke, he left first. While the waiter wasn't paying attention, he made a fierce gesture at Leng Hua. Although Feng Jiu wasn't here at the Heavenly Pill Dispensary, with the two stewards, Leng Hua and Du Fan, as well as the Phoenix Guards and some other people in the dispensary, everything went smoothly and no one caused any trouble. Although the elixirs and medicines in the dispensary weren't cheap, there were still many people who came to buy medicine every day. And on this evening, when the Heavenly Pill Dispensary was about to close, a person came to seek medical treatment. And the person who brought this person to seek medical treatment was someone they didn't expect, Murong Yixian. A man in luxurious clothes came with Murong Yixian, and behind the man in luxurious clothes were 4 cultivators with decent cultivation. "Is your master here?" On the first floor of the Heavenly Pill Dispensary, Murong Yixian looked at Leng Hua and asked. Leng Hua's gaze swept past the man in luxurious clothes beside Murong Yixian and then fell on Murong Yixian. Instead of answering, he asked, "Is there something you need from my master?" Although Leng Hua's attitude was gentle, his behavior was distant and indifferent. So Murong Yixian directly introduced the man in luxurious clothes beside him. "This is a relative of immortal Mu Xian from the Hua Xian sect. He's here to seek medical treatment." "My master isn't here," Leng Hua said, and made an inviting gesture to them. "Please, we're just about to close the shop and rest." Seeing this, the man in luxurious clothes frowned slightly, and there was a trace of displeasure on his handsome face. If it weren't for Murong Yixian's instructions earlier, he would have definitely taught this impudent young man a lesson. When he heard Leng Hua's words, Murong Yishuan was stunned. He then asked, "Then did she say when she would return?" At this moment, he didn't think that Leng Hua was being perfunctory, because he knew that Feng Jiu wasn't the kind of person who would stay in one place forever. Thinking about it, he must have something to do. Young Master Murong must be joking. As subordinates, how would we know when a master will return? Leng Hua said warmly. Looking at Murong Yixian in front of him, he said, "You'd better look for another doctor. I don't want to delay the treatment of my illness." "How dare you?" The man in luxurious clothes bellowed as he stared sharply at Leng Hua. "You're just a mere steward, yet you're so arrogant." Ziheng. Murong Yixian furrowed his brows slightly and looked at the finely dressed man beside him. He was a little displeased with his sudden shout. No one knew better than him how protective Feng Jiu was of his own people. How could the people by her side be berated by others? What's more, this Leng Hua was someone she regarded highly and had been by her side for many years. Naturally, he wasn't someone an ordinary person could compare to. Leng Hua acted as if he didn't see this scene. He still had a gentle smile on his face as he looked at Murong Yixian. "Young Master Murong, please." Seeing this, Murong Yixian sighed inwardly and said, "Then we'll come back another day." Once he finished speaking, he turned around and left. When the finely dressed man saw this, he frowned and swept a glance at Leng Hua with a sullen face. He snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and left. Chapter 2095. Du Fan snorted and said, "Does this Murong Yixian have nothing better to do? Why did he bring this kind of person to our place? That finely dressed man is sick." Fan Lin walked out with light steps as he spoke slowly. "He's definitely sick. There's something wrong with his head." Luo Yu crossed his arms and leaned against the counter. "Why doesn't he take a look at himself? He brought a few people and wanted to throw a tantrum here. Oof. If it weren't for you holding me back just now, I definitely would have come out and taught him a lesson." Fan Lin smiled. "He really is sick, and it's a fatal illness." There was a smile in his eyes as he said, "But this person's luck isn't too good. He came at the wrong time and didn't meet Master. Speaking of which, even if Master was here, whether or not he would be willing to help is another matter. There's no need to pay attention to it. We just need to complete the task Master gave us." Leng Hua said warmly. Everyone nodded. Du Fan then said, "Speaking of which, Master has been gone for a few days. We don't know when he'll be back. We don't know if Master has met that bastard Han Rong yet. Even if he escaped this time, he won't be able to escape next time. Do you think he can still live after being targeted by Master?" As Luo Yu spoke, he waved his hand at them and said, I'm going back to rest. If there's anything, call me. You guys go rest. I'm going back to the manor to take a look. Lung Hua said to everyone. After tidying up the matters in the building, he left through the back door and headed towards the Feng Manor. On the other side, the finely dressed man walking on the main street looked at Murong Yixian and said, You said that being courteous to the ghost doctor is one thing, but is there a need to be so courteous to a mere steward? Look at that brat's attitude. It really makes people angry. Murong Yixian's brow furrowed when he heard this. He turned his head slightly and glanced at the finely dressed man. That's Feng Jiu's person. Even if he's just a steward, he's still someone she values. Didn't I say it already? Since you want to seek medical treatment, you have to lower your attitude. If you continue to act like before, then I'll go back to the sect and apologize to Immortal Mu Xin. You can go and seek medical treatment by yourself. You. He stared at him, his face dark. Murong Yishuan looked at him coldly. I've already said that even if I brought you here, I might not be able to get her to treat you. If it wasn't for Immortal Mu Xion's repeated requests, I wouldn't have done such a thankless task. The luxuriously dressed man was furious, but he didn't express it. He forcefully suppressed it. All right, I understand. In his heart, he was thinking. He really didn't believe that he couldn't get the ghost doctor to treat him. At noon the next day, the man in luxurious clothes brought the 4 cultivators behind him to the Heavenly Pill building again. However, he did not come with Murong Yishuan today. After entering the Heavenly Pill building, he began to look around from the first floor. When he saw that the pills, which were rare even in their clan, were being sold at a high price on the first floor, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He never thought that this Heavenly Pill building would really be like what the outside said. The pills that were not available in other places were all available here. It was said that the pills on the second floor were even more precious and of higher quality. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but be moved. After looking around the first floor, he wanted to go up to the second floor to take a look. However, he didn't know that going up to the second floor required registration. Moreover, the people following him couldn't follow him up. Chapter 2096. Dufan glanced at her and said, There won't be any accidents in our building. You can't bring any attendants when you go upstairs. This is the rule. He pointed at the words hanging on the wall with the building's rules. What if I insist? The finely dressed man asked in disbelief. You can choose to leave. Otherwise, we can send you out of the Heavenly Pill building. Dufan gently fanned himself with a folding fan in his hand. He looked at the finely dressed man in front of him and said with a smile, If you have the guts, you can try. He wouldn't be as gentle as Lung Hua. If this person dared to behave atrociously here, he wouldn't care if he was a relative of the Immortal Mu Xian. If he angered him, he wouldn't give him a good time. The finely dressed man's face turned ugly when he heard this. He still wanted to seek medical treatment here. If he really fought, he didn't want to see the doctor anymore. He suppressed his anger and turned to leave with a flick of his sleeve. Seeing him turn and leave, Dufan sneered. He still sat there leisurely. In the next 2 days, that person didn't come again. Murong Yixian didn't come either. It seemed to be leisurely and calm. Seeing that there was nothing to do, Dufan came to Lung Hua's side and asked, Xiao, well, has been home for 2 or 3 days, right? Didn't you go to see how she's been these 2 days? Hearing this, Lung Hua was slightly surprised. You want to see her? What do you mean I want to see her? I'm not going. You should be the one to go. The little girl fell ill because of you. She's been home for a few days. It's more reasonable for you to visit her. Dufan said with a smile, holding the folding fan in his hand. Lung Hua couldn't help but smile. So it wasn't those people who hurt her? Dufan coughed lightly and said, Aren't we free now? Anyway, there's nothing to do. I'll watch over here. She's also here to help. Since the master isn't here, it's better for you to go and see her. It's not convenient for me to go. Lung Hua shook his head and said with a smile, Xiao is a girl. How can I visit her? It's not good for her. Patriarch Yang can be considered familiar with us. Last time, you helped him out by selling him a pill. He has always remembered this favor of yours. I think it's good that you're there. Maybe he's having a good time. Dufan joked. Hearing this, Lung Hua paused and thought for a moment, then said, "If you really want to visit her, why don't you let my sister go? After all, both of them are women, so no one will gossip about them." Poochie. Ha ha ha. Du Fan couldn't help but laugh. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but overflow. He gently waved the fan in his hand and cast a sidelong glance at Du Fan. "Let your sister go? What's your sister's name?" Lung Shuang. Cold as ice. Let your sister visit the patient expressionlessly? Don't you think it's easy for others to misunderstand? My sister is a very nice person. Hearing him say that his sister was too cold, he couldn't help but refute. "Yes, she's very nice. We all know that your sister is cold on the outside but warm on the inside, but others don't know. Besides, your sister doesn't treat people as gently as you do. With her cold and taciturn personality, what do you think she would do if she went to the Yang family?" he asked with a teasing smile on his face. Chapter 2097. Oh, Lung Hua is going to visit the second young lady? Fan Lin walked out of nowhere and looked at him with a smile. "I didn't say I was going." He shook his head helplessly and smiled. These people really had nothing to do and were just making fun of him. "I'm not busy these 2 days. Since you have nothing to do, you can make a trip to the Yang family to see little second Mississippi. Oh, right, I've also made some pills for her. You can send them to her while you're at it. Let her take them once a day for 3 days. As he spoke, Fan Lin took out a bottle of medicine from his sleeve and handed it to Lung Hua. Seeing this, Lung Hua smiled, took it, and said, "All right, I'll go then." He took the bottle and said to them, "You guys keep an eye on this place. I'll be back in a while." "All right, go ahead." Du Fan waved his fan and said with a smile. He watched Lung Hua leave and then said with a smile, "Actually, I think the second young lady is quite good. She's not bad." Fan Lin nodded. Luo Yu walked out and glanced at the two of them. "Don't worry about it. Lung Hua is younger than the two of you. I don't see you guys in a hurry to get married." "No hurry. No hurry," Du Fan and Fan Lin said at the same time. Then, they looked at each other and smiled. They turned around and went about their own business. Not in a hurry." He snorted softly and touched his face. He muttered softly, "You guys aren't in a hurry, but I'm in a hurry. Why don't any girls like me?" After leaving the Heavenly Pill building, Lung Hua walked on the street and headed in the direction of the Yang family. He walked at a leisurely pace and looked at the bustling street from time to time. When he passed by a pastry shop, he remembered that girls usually like to eat pastries. So, he went into the pastry shop and bought a few boxes of pastries as a gift for visiting people. A man in luxurious clothes in a restaurant inadvertently glanced around and caught a glimpse of a figure on the street. His eyes flashed slightly. Was it the steward of the Heavenly Pill building? She looked behind him and saw that he was alone without anyone accompanying him. She couldn't help but reveal a smile that wasn't a smile. After walking for a while, Lung Hua knew that someone was following him even though he didn't look back. His pace was neither fast nor slow. He walked at the same pace as before and didn't deliberately speed up. When he came to a turn, he stopped and turned around. "Who's there? Come out." Seeing that the youth had discovered them, the man in luxurious clothes was slightly surprised. He walked out and looked at the youth. He asked in confusion, "Aren't you an ordinary person who can't cultivate? How did he discover that we were following him?" Lung Hua looked at the man in luxurious clothes, his face still as gentle as before. "Why are you following me? I would like to invite Steward Lung to have a cup of tea." "I wonder if you would do me the honor?" The man in luxurious clothes said casually as he stared at the gentle youth. 2. What kind of ability did this youth, who didn't have any spiritual aura, have? Hearing the man in luxurious clothes' words, Lung Hua smiled warmly and said, "You're following me today. I'm sure young Master Morong doesn't know." "He doesn't know, but so what?" The man raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Chapter 2098. Is that so? The man in luxurious clothes said disapprovingly. He looked at Lung Hua and said, "Manager Lung might not know who I am." Lung Hua smiled. "Didn't young Master Murong say that you were a relative of Immortal Mu Xian from the Huaxian sect?" I am the son of the first wife of the Yin family, and immortal Mu Xian from the Huaxian sect is my aunt. He raised his chin slightly and spoke with an unconcealable arrogance on his face. So that's how it is. Excuse me for not recognizing you. Lung Hua nodded. Now, I would like to invite Manager Lung to a restaurant for a meal. Will Manager Lung give me the honor? He asked with an arrogant tone, as if he was certain Lung Hua would agree. Lung Hua gently shook his head. I'm really sorry. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave. He cupped his hands and prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, under the signal of the man in luxurious clothes, a cultivator appeared in front of him and blocked his path. Seeing this, he stopped in surprise and looked at the man in luxurious clothes. What are you doing? Naturally, I'm inviting Manager Lung for a drink. The man in luxurious clothes gestured, and the cultivator rushed forward and reached out to grab Lung Hua's shoulder. Seeing this scene, Lung Hua's expression didn't change. He only took a deep look at the man in luxurious clothes and dodged to the side. When he dodged the man's attack, he raised his hand to grab the man's hand and twisted it behind his back. Crack! This! The sound of bones breaking echoed in the alley, followed by a gasp of pain. Not only was the cultivator whose hand was twisted by Lung Hua in disbelief, but even the man in luxurious clothes and the three people behind him were stunned and shocked. He clearly didn't have any spirit power fluctuations. So how? A thought flashed through the man's mind, and he exclaimed, You've learned a cultivation method to hide your aura? That's why you've hidden your aura in cultivation? What kind of cultivation method could hide one's strength and cultivation so perfectly? And he didn't reveal any spirit power aura? This person was just a manager, right? How could there be such a cultivation technique? Could it be that it was taught by the ghost doctor? Lung Hua didn't pay attention to them. Instead, he broke the cultivator's arm and pushed him back to his side. At the same time, his gentle voice rang out. Sir, you said that you are from the direct line of descent. However, judging from your temperament and behavior, you are somewhat lacking. You don't have the demeanor of a direct descendant at all. He ignored the other party's angry expression and said meaningfully, Sometimes, one of your decisions will not only harm you, but also your family. Since you were brought here by young Master Morong, I think you should think twice before you act. If you really can't do it, you can ask young Master Morong to avoid bringing trouble to your family. You're threatening me. The man in luxurious clothes stared at him. There was a fire burning in his heart. His emotions fluctuated so much that the hidden illness in his body flared up. His face suddenly turned pale, and his body began to twitch. He clenched his teeth tightly. Lung Hua watched, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. This was because he saw that the fingernails of the man in luxurious clothes suddenly grew longer. They were black and purple like those of Ghost. Not only that, but his face also seemed to have changed. Chapter 2099. Not good. Master's illness has acted up. Quick, quick, chain. Those people's faces were filled with panic. Some of them took out black iron chains from their cosmos bags while others held him tightly and tied him up in a few moves. In the end, they even put a sack over him and carried him away. Lung Hua stood there in a daze and only regained his senses after a long while. Seeing that he had been forgotten, he shook his head and walked towards the Yang family. Those cultivators carried him back to the courtyard where they were staying. One of them quickly rushed towards a small courtyard where Murong Yixien was. Master Murong, it's not good. Master's illness has acted up. Murong Yixien, who was cultivating cross-legged in his room, opened his eyes and frowned when he heard the voice. Illness? He got off the bed and walked outside. He saw that one of the cultivators who had been following Yin Ziheng was about to rush into his room. So he asked, Where's your master? We sent him back to his room. However, Master's condition seems to be a little serious this time. That cultivator said, Bring me there to take a look. Murong Yixien said and walked outside. When he arrived outside the room, in another small courtyard, he heard a roar that sounded like a ferocious beast and the cultivator's cries of surprise. He pushed open the door and walked in. When he saw the scene inside, he couldn't help but be stunned. He saw that Een Ziheng's muscles were bulging and the luxurious clothes on his body had already burst open, revealing his strange dark purple skin. Looking up, the color from his neck to his face was also dark purple. Two sharp fangs grew out of his mouth, and his eyes were grayish-white with only a little black in the middle. It looked very strange. He opened his mouth, and the roar from his mouth was like that of a wild beast. His strength seemed to have increased as well. Even with the black iron chains and the cultivators holding him down, he was still able to push them away. Seeing this scene, he came back to his senses and asked, "Didn't your master ask you to bring the suppressive medicine with you?" "Yes, we did, but young master has finished all of them. The rest are with second master." Second master said that he was going to the alchemist guild this morning and hasn't returned yet. The rest of the herbs are with him. A cultivator said anxiously. "Then press him down. Don't let him break free. Also, one of you go and find second master Een." As he instructed, he frowned as he watched this scene. Suddenly, he saw that the cultivator holding down Een Ziheng was only using one hand, while the other hand was hanging unnaturally. He asked, "Where did you guys go first? How did you get sick? How did you injure your hand?" The series of questions stunned the three cultivators, and they didn't know how to answer. Could it be that they listened to young master's words, went out without telling him, and even made a move against Manager Long of the Heavenly Pill Building, only to have their hands broken by Manager Long in the end? Seeing the three of them hesitate, Murong Yixian's expression sank, and he shouted, "Speak." "We went out with young master and saw Manager Long on the street. Young master told us to follow him. Young master wanted to invite Manager Long for a drink, but Manager Long didn't give us face, so young master told me to catch him. Unexpectedly, Manager Long didn't have any spiritual aura on him, but he was very agile and broke my hand in one move." Chapter 2100. Hearing this, Murong Yishuan's face was as cold as frost. His handsome face was cold as he pursed his lips and didn't say anything. He only looked at the man in luxurious clothes who had a relapse and said, "Since you won't listen to my advice, wait for your second master to come back and have him bring him back." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't pay any more attention to the person being pressed down and directly turned to leave. Not long after he left, a middle-aged man hurried over under the lead of a cultivator. His expression was ugly as he said, "Why didn't he say anything when he finished his medicine? Didn't I tell you to take good care of him? How could something like this happen?" The second master of the Een family quickly entered the room. When he saw the person who was being pressed down, he hurriedly took out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Not long after the pill entered his mouth, the person who was originally struggling and roaring gradually calmed down. He also collapsed and fainted. Seeing this, he coldly swept his gaze over the cultivators. "What's going on? Why did Hung have a relapse in advance?" The cultivators were just letting out a sigh of relief when they heard the second master's question. They couldn't help but look at each other before reporting the matter to him. "Is it the steward of the Heavenly Pill Building?" Second Master Een frowned. "Didn't you tell me 2 days ago when you came back? We're here to seek medical treatment. Don't provoke the ghost doctor's people. The young master is insensible, but do the people by his side also have no sense of propriety? If we incur a grudge with the Heavenly Pill Building because of this, how will his illness be treated? Have you thought about it?" His face was full of anger as he glared at them. "Let's see how you'll deal with this after something like this happens. Please punish us, second master." They knelt on one knee. At this moment, they finally understood the severity of the matter. If the young master couldn't be treated, they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to escape the master's anger when they returned. Second Master Een took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, calming his furious mood before asking, "Where's young Master Murong?" Before Second Master arrived, this subordinate went to invite young Master Murong over. However, after young Master Murong knew that young master attacked that steward Long, his expression was as cold as ice as he flung his sleeves and left. Say. That cultivator lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. "Say what?" Second Master Een frowned and asked. Tell Second Master to bring young master back when he returns," the cultivator whispered. As expected, when Second Master Een heard this, his expression changed slightly. He stepped forward and kicked that cultivator. You can't do anything right. He could not hide his anger as he turned around and walked out. The cultivator who had been kicked let out a muffled groan and did not dare to say anything. Second Master Een came to Morong Ishien's small courtyard and saw him sitting in the courtyard drinking tea. His face was expressionless and distant. Seeing this, his eyes flashed and he walked forward. Master Morong, Second Master Een. Morong Ishuan looked at him and nodded slightly. I just found out about what Zihong did. I didn't expect him to ignore my warnings, even after I warned him again and again. Second Master Een came to the table and sat down. He sighed softly. Now that the illness has flared up like this and the situation is getting more and more serious, I still haven't seen the ghost doctor. It really makes me worried. Morong Ishien held the teacup in his hand and gently turned it as he said, Second Master Een, forgive me for being unable to do anything about Zihong. I've already prepared to return to the sect in a few days. At that time, I'll ask for forgiveness from Mu Xian. Chapter 2101. When Second Master Een heard his words, his face was filled with anxiety. He looked at Morong Ishien and said, Young Master Morong, I apologize to you on Hung Er's behalf. Please don't lower yourself to his level. Now that we haven't even seen the ghost doctor, how can you wash your hands of it? Morong Ishien shook his head. It's not that I want to bother with him, nor that I want to let it go. I've said before that the ghost doctor's personality is different from ordinary people. It's not easy to ask her to treat someone. Now, Zihong even attacked her subordinates. This isn't something I can control even if I want to. Speaking of this, he smiled bitterly. Moreover, Second Master Een, you've overestimated my relationship with her. He originally came with the mentality of giving it a try, but he didn't expect that Een Ziheng would attack the Heavenly Pill Building's people behind his back. With his understanding of Fengjiu, it was unlikely that she would treat someone. Moreover, if he continued to meddle in this matter, he was afraid that even he would be blacklisted by Fengjiu. Is there no other way? He asked. Morong Ishien was about to shake his head, but he paused and glanced at Second Master Een, saying, I thought of someone. Who? Second Master Een asked. Nalen Emo-chun. He said slowly. His relationship with the ghost doctor isn't shallow. If Second Master Een can ask him to speak up for Zihong, the chances of getting the ghost doctor to act will be higher. He paused, then continued. However, the premise is that you must not provoke the Heavenly Pill Building's people. Hearing this, Second Master Een was slightly startled. Nalen Emo-chun? Why does this name sound so familiar? He should have heard it before, but he couldn't recall it at the moment. Morong Ishien smiled faintly. He's Tianji Elder's disciple. It's said that he's at home now, and the Nalen family is in Hunter River City. Rather than visiting the Alchemy Guild's president, why don't you make a trip to the Nalen family? So he's Tianji Elder's disciple. No wonder it sounds so familiar. He nodded and hesitated for a moment. But I've heard that young Master Emo-chun doesn't seem to be very friendly. It should be said that ordinary people could not even enter his eyes, let alone speak up for them. Morong Ishien nodded. That's right, but this is indeed an opportunity. If he were to speak up, there's at least a 50 to 60% chance. As long as the ghost doctor is willing to treat him, I think Ziheng's illness can be cured completely. Hearing this, the Second Master Een was moved. He stopped pondering and answered, I will go to the Nalen family. I hope I can see this young Master Nalen. On the other side, when the sky darkened, Lung Hua also returned to the Heavenly Pill Building. You're back. Didn't you say you'd be back soon? Why did it take so long? It can't be that Patriarch Yang and the waiter asked you to stay for dinner, right? Du Fan reclined on the chair and looked at Lung Hua jokingly as he walked in. You're really a genius. Lung Hua smiled and sat down next to him. Originally, I wanted to leave after delivering the medicine. Who knew that the father and daughter pair would insist on having me stay for dinner? I had no choice but to eat a little and chat with them. I only returned to the building now. Lung Hua said warmly as he poured himself a cup of tea. Chapter 2102. All right, I got it, Lung Hua replied. As he drank his tea, he thought of the man in luxurious clothes he saw when he went out today. His brows twitched involuntarily as he looked up at Fan Lin and asked, "Last time, you said that the man in luxurious clothes was sick and didn't have long to live. Did you see what illness he had?" Hearing this, Fan Lin looked at him with some surprise. "You're curious about how long that person has to live? I saw him when I went to the Yang family today. I just happened to see him having a relapse," Lung Hua said. Thinking of that strange scene, he only felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Hearing this, Fan Lin thought for a moment and said, "I only saw that person and didn't examine him in detail. However, from his physical condition and his complexion, he really doesn't have long to live. But what illness is that? What happens when he has a relapse? I don't know." Du Fan, who was drinking his tea, felt that something was wrong. He looked at Lung Hua and asked, "How did you meet him?" "He brought those cultivators to block my way. He even said that he wanted to treat me to a drink. When I didn't go, he wanted to attack me." As soon as Lung Hua finished speaking, Du Fan angrily slammed the teacup in his hand on the table. "How preposterous! You got some guts." Hearing his angry shout, Lung Hua smiled. "Keep your voice down. It's a good thing that we're resting. Otherwise, we'll disturb the guests." And then did you teach him a lesson?" Du Fan asked. Even Fan Lin looked at Lung Hua with some gossip. After all, Lung Hua usually treated people well and rarely got angry with others. "I broke the hand of one of the cultivators and said a few words to the man in luxurious clothes. In the end, his illness suddenly flared up. Moreover, the way it acted was a little strange," he said thoughtfully. Thinking of what he saw at that time, he was very puzzled. What kind of illness was that? How could it act like that when it flared up? Fan Lin and Du Fan looked at each other and asked at the same time, how strange. They had seen all kinds of strange things when they were with their master. What other diseases could make him feel strange? His skin turned purplish black when his hair changed, and his fingernails suddenly grew longer like a ghost. Moreover, his appearance also changed. 2 sharp fangs grew out of his mouth, and his muscles expanded. He seemed to have become very strong. Lung Hua said slowly as he looked at Fan Lin, "Have you seen this disease before?" "No." Fan Lin shook his head and pondered. "However, I seem to have heard of this situation before, but I'm not sure if it's really the case." "So you turn into a monster when you're sick?" No wonder he had to seek medical treatment. That kind of illness probably couldn't be cured by ordinary people. It's just that guy doesn't seem to be liked by everyone. Moreover, Master isn't here. I don't think it'll be easy for him to seek medical treatment," Du Fan said carelessly as he waved the fan in his hand, gently fanning himself. Fan Lin smiled and said, "That's hard to say. If it's an illness that Master hasn't seen before, she might treat it." He paused and smiled. "This has nothing to do with who that person is. It's just a doctor's curiosity about an illness that she hasn't seen before." Chapter 2103. I wonder what good things Master will bring back this time, he said expectantly. He felt that his master would definitely gain something from this trip, other than killing Han Rong. Lung Hua and Fan Lin looked at each other and smiled. One of them walked to the backyard while the other said, "I'll go back to the residence to take a look." 2 days later, in a town, 3 people stood in front of the Zhuo residence. "We're here." Zhuo Junwei turned around and said to Fengjiu. "Speaking of which, the old man hasn't been here for a while." Han Yuan stroked his beard and looked at Zhuo Junwei and Fengjiu. He asked, "How do you want to introduce me? Just say that I'm here for your grandmother?" Fengjiu glanced at the old man and said to Zhuo Junwei, "I'll follow the old man inside. You don't have to introduce me. Just find a chance for me to meet your grandmother." When the old man heard this, he smiled and squinted his eyes. "Follow this old man? Be my disciple, cough." Before he could say the word brother, he saw her glare and swallowed his words. The old man wanted to learn Taiji fist from her. He could not provoke her. Zhuo Junwei nodded. "I understand." He walked forward and knocked on the door. Soon, the door opened and an old man poked half his body out. "Eldest young master is back." The old man smiled and looked to the side. When he saw Han Yuan stroking his beard, He hurriedly bowed. Hun Yuan, immortal lord. "Mm." The old man responded and glanced at the old man. Eldest young master, Hun Yuan, immortal lord, please come in. I'll invite the family head. The old man hurriedly invited them in. Only then did he notice that there was a young man in green following behind Hun Yuan, immortal lord. Looking at the young man's plain clothes and lowered eyes, he guessed that he was one of Hun Yuan, immortal lord's people. Don't disturb second uncle. He's coming with me to the West Court, Zhuo Junhue said. The old man was stunned. He watched them walk towards the West Courtyard after entering the mansion. He thought for a while and felt that since the Hun Yuan, immortal lord, was here, even if he was going to the West residence, he should report to the family head and let him know. Therefore, after closing the door, the old man walked to the main court. Feng Jiu, who was following behind the old man, quietly looked around. She saw that in addition to some maids and manservants, there were 1 or 2 secret guards who were paying attention to the surrounding movements in the dark. Inside, whether it was the pavilions, terraces, or the small stone path, they were all very exquisite and the environment was very beautiful. However, after walking towards the small path leading to the West residence, it was a completely different scene. It could be said that there was not a single servant or guard on the small path. Even the shadow guards hidden in the shadows were gone. Until, after entering the gates of the West residence, it was as if the Zhuo residence and the West residence had become 2 different residences. The only difference was, one was imposing and high class, while the other was quiet and elegant. Why? Since we're all in the Zhuo residence, why is the West Court separated? Before Zhuo Junhue could say anything, Hun Yuanzi stroked his beard and looked back at Feng Jiu. That's right, I haven't told you about this yet. There's a reason for this. Chapter 2104. The second son of the Zhuo family is the head of the family and lives in the East Mansion. That's why there are more people there. You can say that the East Mansion is the center of the family. As for the West Mansion, it's their family. There aren't many people there, only his parents, sister-in-law, and a few servants. Hun Yuanzi pointed at Zhuo Junhue and lowered his voice. You know the reason. It's like that. Feng Jiu pursed her lips when she heard this. She naturally understood after hearing what he said. Zhuo Junhue's second uncle lived in the East residence, which meant that he was the true descendant of the Zhuo family. It was reasonable for him to inherit the Zhuo family head position, so it was natural for him to live in the East residence. However, the West residence was a little too quiet. As she walked around, she felt that even though the West residence and the East residence were part of the Zhuo residence, the West residence seemed to have been separated and abandoned. If the mansion was like this, how depressing would it be for them to live here? Did they feel like they were living under someone else's roof? She thought that if her master knew that his descendants were living like this, he would definitely be very reluctant to let them go. Her heart was heavy as she looked at Zhuo Junhue, who was walking slowly in front of her. She finally understood why he was so quiet. After walking for a while, Zhuo Junhue brought them to the living room of the West Mansion. Take a seat. I'll go see my parents. Go. The old man waved his hand and found a place to sit. He took out his wine gourd and drank. He didn't forget to tell Feng Jiu, take a seat. Don't be shy. The people from the East Mansion rarely come here. Feng Jiu also found a place to sit. Looking at the simple living room, she couldn't help but ask, why don't they live elsewhere? With Zhuo Junhue's strength, he's qualified to establish a mansion. It's his grandmother. She didn't allow them to live elsewhere. Besides, other than Junhue, his father isn't very talented. Junhue's younger brother is not bad, but it's useless without a good teacher. The old man took a sip of wine and shook his head. Feng Jiu frowned. How can there be no good teacher? Can't the 4 great sects take the test? The old man stroked his beard and thought. Didn't the old man tell you that his younger brother was born crippled? He's always been in a wheelchair. He rolled his eyes. He couldn't remember if he had mentioned this to her. Feng Jiu was speechless. When did you say that? You only told me that he had a younger brother and a younger sister, and then you said that their family was very poor and that there were only a few people in the family. You also said that his grandmother lived in a small courtyard because of her poor health and usually only prayed to Buddha and recited scriptures. How could you mention these details? You didn't? He smiled embarrassedly. It's not too late to say it now. It's like that. He's talented, but his legs are useless. He can't stand up, so it's not easy for him to become a disciple. Tell me, who would be willing to accept someone in a wheelchair as their disciple? That's why he's always at home. His spiritual power cultivation is all right, but it's not easy for him to cultivate martial arts. Chapter 2105. Seeing that she was no longer talking, the old man stroked his beard and coughed lightly. Although this old man doesn't have a disciple, this old man's standards are quite high. Although his talent is not bad, he still can't reach this old man's standards, so hee. Fengjiu sat quietly and ignored him. The old man felt bored and did not say anything else. At the same time, in the main courtyard of the West residence, Zhuo Chuhui was talking to his wife when he saw a familiar figure walk in from the corner of his eye. Both of them were stunned when they saw the person. Junyue, you're back? Both of them stood up and walked toward their eldest son. Didn't you go out to train with the Hunyuan Immortal Lord? Why did you suddenly come back? Did something happen? Father, mother. Zhuo Junyue bowed to both of them and greeted them. He looked at his parents and paused for a moment before saying, I did come back because of something. What is it? Could it be that you ran into some trouble outside? Or did the Hunyuan Immortal Lord chase you back? His mother asked worriedly. Looking at her son who had not returned home for a long time, she felt sorry for him. Did you suffer outside? Look at you, you've lost weight. Mother, I'm fine. Zhuo Junyue said, not knowing what to say. Seeing this, his father asked, Then what's the reason? Why did you come back? Looking at the worried faces of his parents, he took a deep breath and said in a steady voice, Dad, Mom, I have news of grandfather. Hearing this, both of them were stunned. Well, what? Grandfather? I have news of grandfather, my biological grandfather, he said slowly. Looking at his stunned father, he said, When I went to the volcano forest with the Hunyuan Immortal Lord, I met grandfather's disciple and learned about grandfather from her. So this time, Duddy spoke slowly and briefly explained the matter. Looking at his father, who was still in a daze for a long time, he said, She said that grandfather's wish is to know how his descendants are doing, so she came to see you on behalf of grandfather. He paused for a moment and said, Moreover, grandmother asked me to let her know if I had any news. This time, I came back because I wanted her to meet grandmother. Zhuo Chuhui listened in a daze, unable to describe the feelings in his heart. Finally, there was news of his father? Father? To him, it was so familiar yet so strange. His blood flowed in his body. It was the inheritance of his bloodline. However, he had never seen his father. He did not know anything about his father. He only knew that every time his mother thought of his father, she would cry silently. Now, there was finally news of his father, saying that his father's disciple had come to visit them on behalf of his father. Hearing this, he couldn't help but laugh. Ha! There's actually news of him? His laughter was so sorrowful, so sorrowful. Although he was smiling, his expression was uglier than if he were crying. Master, since that's the case, let's go and meet them. Zhuo Junyue's mother said softly as she patted Zhuo Chuhui's hand to comfort him. Chapter 2106. Up ahead. He nodded. He also knows a little about this. Zhuo Chuhui said, Let's go take a look. He said to his wife, You stay here. There's no need to go. All right, then you and your father should hurry over. Don't let them wait too long. I'll get the kitchen to prepare the food. Madame Zhuo signaled for them to hurry. Thus, the father and son went forward. When they arrived at the front and entered the hall, Zhuo Chuhui saw Han Yuanzi sitting in the middle of the hall, leisurely drinking wine. Therefore, he shifted his gaze to the young man beside him. When he saw the young man, he was a little surprised. That young man was dressed in green, sitting there quietly with a pensive look on his face. No one knew what he was thinking about. When he saw them come in, he raised his eyes to look at them. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes, and his clear eyes quietly sized them up. This was his father's disciple? How could he be so young? He was a little surprised. He originally thought that his father's disciple would be around his age, but he didn't expect him to be such a young man. Such a young man really surprised him. Immortal sir, he bowed to Hun Yuan Zi and said with a smile, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Yes, this old man also didn't expect to come to your house so soon. Hun Yuanzi squinted his eyes and looked at him with a smile. He took a sip of wine, glanced at Feng Jiu, and said to Zhuo Chuyi, but she's the one who's looking for you today, not this old man. Just treat this old man as invisible. Hearing this, the smile on Zhuo Chuyi's face froze. He thought to himself, this immortal sir is still so direct. Feng Jiu, this is my father, Zhuo Chuyi. Zhuo Junyue introduced his father to Feng Jiu. Master Zhuo. Feng Jiu bowed and greeted. Young Master Feng, please take a seat. Zhuo Chuyi gestured and sat down. Master Zhuo, I'd like to see the old madam. Please accompany me, she said directly. Upon hearing this, Zhuo Chuyi paused for a moment before he looked at Feng Jiu and said, Young Master Feng, my son has already told me what happened. However, I still have a few questions for you. Excuse me, she said. You said that your master's name is Chu Batian, a famous character in the lower continents. Then, do you know if their names are similar? How can you be sure that your master is my father? Hearing this, Feng Jiu's lips curled into a smile. Let's not talk about other things. Just your appearance alone is 70 to 80% similar to your father's. If I wasn't too sure before, but after seeing your appearance, I can already confirm that you are his descendants. Hearing this, Zhuo Chuyi was slightly stunned. Did he resemble his father at all? It turned out that he and his father were quite similar. It turned out that his father's appearance was like this. Pausing for a moment, he looked at the youth in front of him and muttered to himself, so what if we find his descendants? He's no longer here, so what does it matter to him what happens to us? I heard that your second son's legs aren't good. I know a little about medicine, so I could take a look at him. She didn't answer his question. Chapter 2107. Her master had more or less the same intentions back then. It was just that she did not want to be too full of herself. However, if they wanted to set up their own residence in the city or somewhere else that belonged to the Chu family, she would do her best to help. Furthermore, her second son could not stand up. If she could treat him, she would naturally help him. After all, he was her master's descendant. As long as he was not an evil person, as long as he was not a vicious person, she would help him if she could. Furthermore, Feng Jiu smiled and looked at the dazed Zhuo Yuechuan. I believe that old madam still remembers my master in her heart. Otherwise, your name would not be Chu Wei. Once he said this, the hall fell silent. Zhuo Chuyi lowered his eyes in a daze. Zhuo Junyue also stood there quietly. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing this scene, the old man at the side coughed softly and spoke. Bring her to see old madam first. Later, go and see Junyue's younger brother. Her medical skills are indeed good. Perhaps there will be some hope. As the old man spoke, he looked at the father and son pair. Although he is no longer around, the fact that he could tell his disciple this proves that he still has you, his descendants, in his heart. Sometimes, many things are unpredictable. Perhaps even he himself did not expect that such a thing would happen back then. To you, it is only a story that you heard from others. To him, it was a personal experience. Anyone who had encountered the tragedy of having their entire family wiped out would not feel good. Since so many years had passed, and his descendants had already married and had children, those things could only be flipped over like flipping through a book. There was no longer any discussion about who was right and who was wrong. After a long silence, Zhuo Chuyi said to Feng Jiu, "Come with me. I will bring you to see my mother." Father, if we bring her over like this, second uncle will definitely find it strange. Perhaps even grandfather will know about this. The grandfather he was referring to was naturally the Zhuo family's old master. Although he had news of his biological grandfather and found his successor, it was indeed not good to bring her to see his grandmother like this. Hearing this, Zhuo Chuyi pondered for a moment and nodded. That's right. Mother has been cultivating in seclusion for many years. If we suddenly bring someone over like this, it will definitely alarm the people in the East Mansion. If they ask, Old man, go and visit old madam. Just bring them all over. After all, I've met old madam a few times. It shouldn't be a problem for me to go over. The old man said with a smile. He winked at Feng Jiu and smiled, as if saying, Look, I'm covering for you. Then, immortal, Zhuo Chui said as he bowed to the old man. No, no trouble at all. He waved his hand and said with a smile, let's go now. With that, he took the lead and walked out. Seeing this, the three to the Zhuos, of course, Zhu meanwhile, in the East Mansion. Oh, you mean the Han Yuan Immortal Lord is here? The current head of the Zhuo family, the second uncle that Zhuo Junyue referred to, was surprised when he heard this news. Does that mean Junyue is also back? Chapter 2108. Hearing this, he nodded and ordered, then let the mansion prepare. Invite them to the East Mansion for a gathering tonight. Speaking of which, it has been a long time since my eldest brother left the West Mansion. Speaking of this, he sighed softly and waved his hand, indicating for the elder to leave. Yes, the old man replied, and then left respectfully. Zhuo family head sat in the main seat, deep in thought. He thought of how his eldest brother's family had been isolated from the rest of the world in the West Mansion. Although they were all in the Zhuo family, his eldest brother's family gave off the feeling that they were living under someone else's roof. He was not the only one who felt this way. He believed that everyone in the East Mansion felt the same way. As for the rumors that had been circulating in the mansion all these years, he had turned a blind eye and ignored them. Even if his eldest brother was not his father's son, he was still his mother's son, his half-brother. However, the family elders did not think so. They were worried that his eldest brother would interfere in the Zhuo family's affairs and that the Zhuo family would fall into the hands of outsiders. Therefore, they did not let his eldest brother interfere in the Zhuo family's affairs and even secretly suppressed him. His eldest brother had been ordinary all these years and did not seem to be outstanding. The only thing that surprised him was that Junyu somehow knew the Han Yuan Immortal Lord. Their family also seemed to have a good relationship with the Han Yuan Immortal Lord. Occasionally, the Han Yuan Immortal Lord would visit the West Mansion. Other than that, there was nothing else. Just as he was deep in thought, he saw the steward walk in from outside. Family head. The old steward walked up and greeted him respectfully. He came back to his senses and looked at the old steward, asking, What's wrong? Family head. The first master of the West Mansion and the others went to the old madam's courtyard. The old steward said, It's normal for my eldest brother to visit my mother. What's the fuss about? He said casually. However, he paused and looked at the old steward, asking, Who else went besides the first master? The first master and first master, the Han Yuan Immortal Lord and a youth in green. Hearing this, he was slightly startled. The Han Yuan Immortal Lord and a youth in green? Didn't they say that the youth in green only came with the Immortal Lord? Why did they go to the old madam's courtyard? He felt a little strange in his heart, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. On the other side, in the old madam's courtyard. Wait a moment. I'll go in and talk to Mother, Zhuo Chui said to Primordial Chaos and Fengjiu before walking in. The old man casually sat down by the stone table in the courtyard, while Fengjiu stood and quietly observed the layout of the courtyard. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Zhuo Chui walked out from inside. Young Master Feng, come in. My mother wants to see you. He looked at Fengjiu and said. Seeing this, Fengjiu walked in while Han Yuan and Zhuo Junyue remained outside. After they went in, the old man took a sip of wine and looked at Zhuo Junyue beside him. You didn't tell your father that the girl is a girl? Zhuo Junyue paused for a moment and said, I only said that he's my grandfather's disciple. Chapter 2109. How long would this girl have to wait before she was willing to teach him? Fengjiu, who had followed Zhuo Chui inside, saw that it was a small hall with simple decorations. Other than a Buddha statue, there was nothing else. In the inner hall, an old madam sat quietly on her knees in front of the Buddha statue. She was twirling the prayer beads in her hand. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound could be heard. Mother, she's here. Zhuo Chui said as he looked at his mother in front of the Buddha statue. The old madam stopped twirling the prayer beads and stood up. Zhuo Chui helped her to a chair at the side before she looked at the newcomer. A pair of aged eyes landed on Feng Jiu as she quietly sized her up. She looked at the woman dressed as a man and asked, "Miss, are you Chu Baishan's successor?" Zhuo Chui was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He looked at Feng Jiu. Feng Jiu smiled and looked at the old madam. He stepped forward and bowed. Feng Jiu greets mistress. My master is indeed Chu Batian. The old madam laughed. I didn't expect him to have a successor. I didn't expect him to still remember that he has descendants. Haha. The three of them chatted in the room. Outside the room, the old man looked at Zhuo Junyue, who was sitting upright. He was curious about the situation inside and kept looking inside. He looked at the expressionless Zhuo Junyue and asked, "Aren't you curious about what they're talking about? Aren't you going to take a look? Grandmother and father are inside. There's nothing for me to do," Zhuo Junyue said. "Hee kid, let me talk to you about something serious." The old man narrowed his eyes and chuckled. He wanted to talk to Zhuo Junyue about something serious, but when he saw Zhuo Junyue's expression and laughter, it was difficult to connect him to something serious. When he saw Zhuo Junyue looking at him without saying anything, the old man coughed lightly and said, "It's like this. I think this Feng Jiu is quite capable. Take a look. When we were in the volcano forest, the blood demon actually knew her name as the ghost doctor. You can imagine that she's quite famous. Another thing is that her strength and ability are beyond everyone's expectations, especially her medical skills, which are top-notch. It is extremely beneficial to have a relationship with such a person. Others want to have a relationship with her, but they can't. But you're different. You are the descendants of her master, and she has to call your grandmother master's wife. With this relationship, you have to hug this thigh well, lest you regret it when the time comes." At this point, the old man paused and looked inside. He lowered his voice and said, "So, if she says she wants to help you, you don't have to be polite with her. It's such a good resource, it's a waste not to take it." Upon hearing the old man's words, Zhuo Junyue glanced at him speechlessly without saying a word. Inside the room, the three of them were chatting. The old madam glanced at Feng Jiu, her aged voice pausing between each word as she said, "All these years, I didn't allow Chu Hui to set up his own residence because I felt that I owed the Zhuo family. If I hadn't met my later husband and been saved by him, not only me, but even Chu Hui wouldn't have survived. All these years, it was the Zhuo family who has always protected us. The Zhuo family has done us a favor. So even if Chu Hui isn't recognized by the Zhuo family elders, I still won't allow him to abandon the Zhuo family." Chapter 21:10. Feng Jiu looked deeply at her and nodded. "I understand. However, if you need my help in the future, you can find me at the Heavenly Pill Dispensary in Hundred River City." She paused and continued, "Mistress, you must have some old ailments. I will stay in the manor for a few days and help you nurse your body back to health." Today's short interaction made her realize that she was a righteous and affectionate person, since she was her master's wife. Even if she later remarried to old Master Zhuo, she was still worthy of her respect. Using silver needles was not a big deal. Hearing this, the old madam was startled and then nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble you." She then said to Zhuo Chui, "Take good care of Miss Feng." "Yes, mother." Zhuo Chui bowed and left with Feng Jiu. Seeing them come out, Han Yuan and Zhuo Junhua stood up and walked over. Han Yuan looked at them and asked, "Finished chatting?" "Yes." Feng Jiu nodded and said to Zhuo Junhua, "I will stay here for a while. Sorry for disturbing you." Zhuo Junhua did not say much and only said, "As long as you don't mind, you can stay for as long as you want. Let's go. We will return to the West Manor first." Zhuo Chui said and was about to walk out with them when he saw a figure walk in. He stopped when he saw who it was. Big brother. The person who came was the head of the Zhuo family. He came alone with his hands behind his back. When he saw the people in the courtyard, he first greeted Chu Zhuo before looking at Han Yuan Zi with a smile. "Immortal Monarch, how have you been?" "Second uncle." Zhuo Junhua bowed and called out. Seeing him nod and smile, Zhuo Junyue stood quietly. Second brother, are you here to see mother? Zhuo Chui asked with a relaxed expression. Yes and no. He smiled and said, I heard from the gatekeeper that Junyu is back, and so is the immortal monarch. I also heard that all of you came to mother's place. I wanted to come and take a look. I've already asked the kitchen to prepare. It's rare that everyone is here, so all of you can come to the East Mansion for a meal tonight. Hearing this, the old man stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. That's fine too. This old man has never refused anything that comes his way. But let me say this first. You can have nothing else, but this wine must be prepared. Haha, of course. Immortal monarch can rest assured. He smiled and looked at his brother, who didn't respond, and asked, Big brother, do you want to come over for dinner tonight? Let's call all three of them. It's just a family gathering to have a good chat. Seeing this, Zhuo Chui said, all right, then I'll go back and tell your sister-in-law that we'll come over in the evening. All right, I'll go see mother and tell her that she hasn't come out for a long time. Since the immortal monarch is here today, I'll ask her and father to come out together. Then we'll go back first. Zhuo Chui said, and then left with Han Yuan and the others. Seeing them leave, the head of the Zhuo family walked inside to see his mother first. Chapter 2111. Zhuo Chui nodded. Yes, second brother is very good to our family and takes good care of us. Yes, it's just that the elders of the Zhuo family don't approve of you. Zhuo Zhenglin is quite considerate and capable. Otherwise, your Zhuo family wouldn't be so prosperous. The old man opened the gourd and took a sip of wine. He glanced at Zhuo Chui. Aren't we going to visit Brother Junyue? This is an opportunity in front of us. If we miss it, we might not have such a good opportunity next time. Zhuo Chui glanced at Feng Jiu and said to his eldest son, Bring Sir Immortal and Miss Feng over. I'll go talk to your mother about something. Okay, Zhuo Junyue nodded and glanced at Han Yuanzi and Feng Jiu, indicating for them to follow him. This blockhead, the old man muttered and shook his head. He followed him to another small courtyard. When they arrived at another courtyard, before they even got close, they could already hear voices coming from inside. Second brother, mother said that big brother is back, and that unruly old grandpa is here too. However, they went to the East Mansion to visit grandmother. Mother told us to go over later. She asked the kitchen to prepare some food. She said that we should have a good meal together as a family. The speaker was a young girl in an orange dress. She looked pretty and was about 15 or 16 years old. She was half squatting beside a wheelchair and looking at her second brother. The man in the wheelchair was in his early 20s. He was dressed in a sky blue robe and had a gentle smile on his handsome face. He held a book in his hand and was currently listening to the young girl's words. As if he had sensed someone's arrival, he suddenly turned his head and looked outside the courtyard. Big brother? Sir Immortal, you're here. His smile deepened when he saw familiar faces. He said to the young girl beside him, Push me over. Big brother, grandpa. Zhui Yuzhen smiled and greeted the two of them happily. She pushed her second brother forward. Zhuo Junyue's expression softened when he saw his sister-in-law. He looked at the two of them and said, I've been home for a while. I just came back from visiting my grandmother. As he spoke, he took out something from his space and handed it to the two of them. This is a gift for you. Thank you, big brother. The two of them spoke in unison. Zhui Yuzhen first opened the Chinquan bag handed over by her big brother. She took out a lot of beautiful and fun things from it, including 2 or 3 defensive magical weapons. Zhuo Junyang took out some magical treasures, as well as some books on cultivation and medicine. Delighted, he said, Big brother, I really like these gifts. Yes, I like it too. Zhui Yuzhen also smiled happily. It's good that you like her, he said, and introduced her to his sister-in-law. This is Feng Jiu. The two of them looked at the silent young man in green and secretly sized him up before greeting young Master Feng. Feng Jiu nodded and stepped forward. He said to the man, Give me your hand. Hearing this, Zhuo Junyang was slightly surprised. He looked at the young man in front of him. At this moment, his elder brother said, Her medical skills are very good. Let her take a look at you. Chapter 2112. He lowered his gaze to hide the strange look in his eyes. Because he was unable to move his legs, he also liked to study medicine. The young man in front of him looked even younger than him, but when he checked his pulse, he could feel that there was something unusual about him. He could only feel that as the youth's slender and fair fingers touched his pulse, a wave of spiritual energy flowed through his veins and throughout his body. However, that wave of spiritual energy was retracted in an instant. "I have to take a look at your legs." She looked at the man in the wheelchair and said. Zhuo Junyang couldn't help but be taken aback. He instinctively looked at his elder brother. When he saw his elder brother nod, he put away the book and chinquan bag in his other hand. Then he bent down and rolled up his pants to his knees. Feng Jiu squatted in front of him and was surprised to see that his legs had not shrunk. They were just pale, as if there was no blood in them. She reached out and felt that the veins in his legs were almost non-existent. "How is it? Can it be treated?" The old man could not help but ask. "It can be treated, but it's a little troublesome." As she spoke, she stood up and looked at Zhuo Junyue. "Although the veins in your brother's leg are not broken, it's almost as if they were broken. It's an extremely rare case of tendinitis. For those who suffer from this condition, the veins in their entire body are almost non-existent. It's the first time I've seen partial tendinitis like this. However, compared to the whole body, your luck can be considered good." Zhuo Junyang was stunned. He did not know how to react. It was the first time in so many years that someone said that he was lucky. It sounded quite refreshing. Moreover, could his legs be treated? To be honest, perhaps it was because he had seen too many doctors and had been disappointed time and time again. At this moment, these hopeful words no longer stirred up any hope in his ears. Suddenly, he heard his elder brother's determined voice. He could not help but look up. If she says it can be treated, it can definitely be treated. Zhuo Junyue looked at his younger brother and said again, "Her medical skills are very good." Zhuo Junyang was slightly taken aback. When he heard these words, he could not help but turn his gaze towards the youth in green. He saw that the youth in green was looking at his elder brother with his eyebrows slightly raised. His expression was one of surprise, as if he had not expected his elder brother to say such a thing. "Well, that's right. Since she said she can cure it, then she can definitely cure it. I don't know about other old men, but since she dares to say this, then she must have a way." Hun Yuanzi stroked his beard and glanced at Feng Jiu. "What do you mean by trouble? Do you lack medicine?" Seeing that both of them were so sure of her medical skills, Feng Jiu couldn't help but smile and look at the old man. Yes, to treat his leg, there are a few medicines that are more important and more difficult to find. "What medicine?" "I'll go look for him," Zhuo Junyue said. Feng Jiu glanced at him and slowly said, 500-year-old 9-section sky lantern grass, 1,000-leaf scale flower, and blood deer tendon. Zhuo Junyue frowned when he heard that he had never heard of it before. He secretly noted it down. "I'll look for it." Chapter 21:13. That's right. That's why I said it's hard to find the medicine. Feng Jiu smiled and looked at Zhuo Junyue. "Are you sure you can find it?" Zhuo Junyue met her smiling eyes and said in a low voice, "Even if I can't find it, I still have to find it. I won't let go of even the slightest chance." As long as his brother could stand again, he would try anything. Zhuo Junyang's heart warmed at his brother's words. He looked at his taciturn brother and smiled gently. "Big brother, it's all right. I'm used to it. Don't worry, I'll find all the medicine you need." He reached out and patted his brother's shoulder. "Don't worry." Zhuo Junyang did not say anything else and only smiled. He knew that since his brother had said so, he would definitely do it. However, could he really stand again? His gaze fell on his legs. He had read so many medical books, but he still did not know what was wrong with his legs. However, this young man named Feng Jiu only took a glance and checked his pulse to know his symptoms. To be honest, he was quite surprised. Could it be that this young man's medical skills were really that good? Seeing this, Zhuo Yuzhen said happily, "That's great. Second brother's legs can be treated. Father and mother will be very happy to hear this news." As she spoke, she looked at everyone and said, "Big brother, second brother, grandfather, big brother phone, let's go to the front." It should be time to eat. Come, come, come. Let's eat. The old man nodded and turned to pull Fengjiu outside. He said to the three people behind him, "The three of you, quickly follow us." Seeing the two of them leave the small courtyard, Zhuo Junyang asked, "Big brother, is this young Master Feng's medical skills really that good? Where's he from? Where did you meet him?" Seeing that the two of them had left, Zhuo Junyue said to his sister-in-law, "She's our biological grandfather's disciple. We met her some time ago, but we only found out that her master is our biological grandfather recently." Looking at his sister-in-law's stunned face, he slowly said, "Previously, after coming back to see father and mother, she went to grandmother's place. However, only a few of us know about this matter. Second uncle didn't reveal it. Now, I'm telling you because I want to tell you that she is indeed a capable person. Don't treat her like an ordinary person." He paused and looked at his brother. "Since she said your legs can be treated, they can be treated. Her medical skills are very good. I believe her." The two of them were stunned for a while before they recovered. Actually, they knew a little about their family's relationship with the East. However, their father and mother didn't tell them before, their parents, and they had not told them much. They only vaguely, they had known, but they had never asked them. Now their big brother to tell them. So she was their biological grandfather's disciple. No wonder. A truly capable doctor would rarely come to their doorstep like this. Thinking about it, it must be because their biological grandmother was his master. That's why he came to treat him. Thinking of this, he felt relieved. It was fine as long as he knew that person's background. Chapter 21:14. It's a long story. I'll tell you about it when I have time. Let's go. Don't let father and mother wait for too long. Zhuo Junyue said as he pushed the wheelchair outside. Zhuo Yuzhen didn't say anything else. Zhuo Junyang changed the topic and asked about his big brother's encounter this time. In the front yard of the West residence, there was a round table with 8 delicious dishes on it. There were also 2 jugs of fine wine. The atmosphere was relaxed and cheerful. "Miss Feng, since you're here, just treat this place as your own home. Take whatever you want to eat. Don't stand on ceremony with us." Zhuo Chui smiled as he poured wine for her and Han Yuanzi. When Zhuo Junyang and Zhuo Yuzhen heard their father call the green-robed youth Miss, they were momentarily stunned. Zhuo Junyang shifted his gaze to the green-robed youth sitting next to Han Yuanzi. No matter how he looked at him, that person was still a young man. "But why not Big Brother Feng, you're a girl? Then wouldn't I have to call you Big Sister Feng?" Zhuo Yuzhen was even more direct. After hearing her father's words, she directly asked Fengjiu. "Yes, I'm a girl. I'm wearing men's clothes to make it easier for me to move around." Fengjiu took a sip of wine and smiled at her. "I really couldn't tell," Zhuo Yuzhen said in surprise. Ahem. Hearing this, Fengjiu coughed lightly, not knowing how to respond. Was she too much like a man? All right. In any case, it wasn't the first time someone had mistaken her for someone else. She doesn't have any feminine charm. That's why your brother and I didn't know she was a girl when we first met her." The old man smiled as he glanced at Fengjiu and picked up a piece of meat to eat. Father Zhuo and Mother Zhuo looked at each other and smiled, urging them to eat more. Although there were only 8 dishes, each dish was quite large. In the end, everyone was full, but there were still a few dishes left. "I've already asked someone to prepare the guest rooms. Don't worry and just stay here. Our West residence is usually quieter and no one will disturb us." Mother Zhuo smiled as she called over a servant girl and asked her to bring them to the guest rooms to rest. The journey back from the past few days was tiring. Now that they were full, they naturally wanted to lie down and rest. Thus, they followed the servant girl to the guest rooms and prepared to take an afternoon nap. They'll go to the East residence in the evening. After arriving at the client's room, the old man fell asleep immediately. Fengjiu asked someone to prepare hot water for her to take a bath before she went to bed to rest. She hadn't slept on the bed for a long time. Now that she relaxed, she fell asleep in no time. The 2 guests were going to take an afternoon nap. Zhuo Junyue and his family went to the hall and dismissed the servants. They didn't know what they were talking about. In the evening, when the East residents sent someone to invite them, They asked Zhuo Junyue to wake Han Yuanzi and Feng Jiu up. The old man remembered that there was a banquet in the East residence and woke up when Zhuo Junyue knocked on the door. He tidied up and left. As for Feng Jiu, when Zhuo Junyue knocked on the door, only a sleepy voice came from inside. Chapter 21:15. Zhuo Junyue continued to knock on the door when he heard that. Open the door. When Feng Jiu heard the knocking on the door, she felt like she had just woken up. She wanted to sleep, but the knocking on the door kept her awake. In the end, she lifted the blanket and walked out of the room. She opened the door and glared at the person who was knocking on the door. Didn't I tell you? I don't have to go. Your second uncle invited an old man. It'll take me a lot of effort to explain to him. Besides, I'm not hungry yet. You guys can go. Don't worry about me. I still want to go out after I wake up. After saying that, she scratched her head and closed the door. She walked back into the room and lay down on the bed to continue sleeping. When the old man in the courtyard heard that, he stroked his beard and said, "It's fine if she doesn't want to go. Your second uncle didn't say anything about letting her go anyway. Let's go." He called out to Zhuo Junyue and walked out leisurely. Zhuo Junyue paused for a moment. "Then I'll get someone to prepare some food for you." After saying that, he turned and left. Feng Jiu did not have enough sleep. She fell asleep again after a while. When she woke up, it was because she was hungry. After tidying herself up, she walked out of the room and saw that the sky was already dark. The lights in the residence were already lit. Seeing that the night was not bad, she wanted to go out for a walk. However, when she walked out of the courtyard, she remembered that Zhuo Junyue had asked someone to prepare dinner for her. Forget it. She'd better go out for a walk and see if there was anything to eat. When she thought of that, an expectant smile appeared on her face. She walked briskly out of the residence. In the East residence, the old mistress did not see Feng Jiu at the banquet. She asked, "Why didn't Feng Jiu come with you?" "Her? Don't worry about her. She was still sleeping when we came out. Junyue already told the kitchen to prepare dinner for her. It's fine," the old man said with a smile. He took a sip of the wine and said to the Zhuo family head, "This wine is indeed mellow. It must have been hidden for many years, right?" The head of the Zhuo family was surprised that his mother would ask about the azure-robed youth beside Master Han Yuan. Just as he was wondering what was strange about the azure-robed youth, he heard Master Han Yuan's words and couldn't help but smile. "It is quite old. If Immortal Monarch likes it, I'll give you 2 jars later." "Ha ha! Then this old man won't be polite." He laughed loudly, extremely happy. On the other side, Feng Jiu wandered around after leaving the manor. She liked to eat the local delicacies, especially the small things from the street stalls. After walking around, she came to a small stall and sat down, eating a snack that even she couldn't name. "Have you heard? Recently, many of the black market's branches have been destroyed. Many industries have suffered heavy losses. The black market has been closed recently. I wonder if the problem has been solved?" Feng Jiu, who was sitting in a corner eating, raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard this. She looked back and saw 2 or 3 cultivators eating at another table while chatting. "The black market has been destroyed? Why haven't I heard about it?" The people who were chatting heard the azure-robed youth's question. They sized him up and laughed. "So what have you heard? The people who dared to attack the black market must have a powerful background. Let me tell you, I also heard that the owner of the black market was seriously injured. His condition is very bad." Chapter 21:16. Look at what you're saying. If this wasn't the case, how could I say that? I heard that the injury was very serious. Think about it. If the owner of the black market wasn't in a good condition, how could the black market's power be suppressed so badly? That's right. The black market's power here is not to be underestimated. I didn't expect that the trouble this time would be so troublesome. In my opinion, if the owner of the black market can't get through this crisis, the black market will be destroyed along with him. Hearing this, Feng Jiu thought for a moment and asked, "Then, have you heard of any power that made a move against the black market? Here, which power is strong enough to compete with the black market? From what I know, the owner of the black market's power is unfathomable. How could he be injured so easily? Could it be that there's some inside story? We don't know about that. The news hasn't spread, so we can't know even if we want to. In my opinion, even the people of the black market don't know what's going on. I think only the core members know the whole story. However, to be able to become a core member of the black market, he must be someone with some ability. Small people like us don't have the right to meet such a person. The man smiled and took a sip of wine. He looked at Feng Jiu and said, "Little brother, why are you so concerned about the black market? Could it be that you're from the black market?" As he spoke, he looked at Feng Jiu from head to toe. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled and said, "With my power, how could I be from the black market? I'm just curious. Also, as you said, the black market has a certain degree of stability here. I'm just surprised that it was destroyed." Hearing this, the men laughed and chatted with Feng Jiu. After a while, Feng Jiu left first. She didn't go back to the Jiu family. Instead, she walked around the city and walked into a shop that sold medicine. "Young master, what do you need?" The medicine boy came up and asked. Feng Jiu looked at the medicine shop and asked, "Where's your shopkeeper?" "The shopkeeper is inside." "Young master, is there something you need?" The medicine boy looked at the cyan-robed young master in surprise. "Well, tell him to come out," she said as she walked around, looking at the medicine in the medicine shop. Seeing this, the medicine boy walked inside. When he came to the inner room, he said to the shopkeeper who was sorting the medicine, "Shopkeeper, there's a young master in green outside. He said he's looking for you." When the shopkeeper heard this, he said, "I understand. You could go out first. I'll come out after I'm done here." The shopkeeper sorted the herbs in front of him and tidied them up before walking out. When he came outside, he saw the young man in green looking around the store. He didn't know what he was looking for, but when he saw the young man's face, the shopkeeper was a little puzzled. He didn't know this person. Could it be that he was not looking for him, but for the medicine? Thinking of this, he took a step forward and asked with a smile, "Young master, do you need any medicine?" Feng Jiu looked back at the shopkeeper and asked, "Are you the shopkeeper here?" "Yes, I'm a shopkeeper here. Is there anything I can help you with?" he asked with a smile. Seeing this, Feng Jiu turned her hand, and a token appeared in her palm. The shopkeeper looked at him with a smile. Suddenly, he saw a command medallion in the young man's hand. When he saw the command medallion clearly, he was shocked. His eyes widened in disbelief. "You, let's find a place to talk." Chapter 21:17. This lowly one did not know that Master was coming and did not welcome you. "Please forgive me, forgive me." The shopkeeper hurriedly bowed after entering the room. His expression was agitated and his eyes shone with excitement. It was their master, the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu. He never thought that he, the shopkeeper of this small medicine shop, would have the opportunity to meet their master. It was simply too inconceivable. "Rise." Feng Jiu kept the token and casually sat down in the room. "I'm here to ask you to send a message to the Heavenly Pill Building. Bring me a brush and ink." "Yes, yes," the shopkeeper hurriedly replied. After bringing the brush and ink, he respectfully stood to the side, secretly sizing up his master from time to time. He knew that his master was in the 100 River City's Heavenly Pill House, but he didn't expect that his master would go out and come here. He had only heard of this master, but had never seen him before. He was curious, excited, and even more so, respectful. This was the first time he had seen his master at such a close distance. One could imagine how excited he was. Feng Jiu finished writing the message and sealed it with a watermark before handing it to him. "Send it out as soon as possible. I'll come back in 2 days." "Yes, yes," he replied. Seeing that his master was about to leave, he asked, "Does master have a place to stay here?" "This lowly one has a courtyard behind here for master to rest." "There's no need." She waved her hand and stopped in her tracks. She turned back to look at him. "I'll be staying in the Jiu family for a while. If there's anything urgent, you can go to the Jiu family's west residence to find Jiu Junwei." "Yes, this lowly one will remember," he respectfully replied as he sent her out. After seeing his master leave, the shopkeeper hurriedly sent someone to deliver the letter to the Heavenly Pill Building in 100 River City. There was also a black market in the city, But Fengjiu did not go there. Now that she was staying in Hunter River City, the people in the black market would definitely know. If the owner of the black market was in a serious condition, he would probably send a letter to the Heavenly Pill building. As for the Zhuo family, her mistress had to be nursed back to health, and Zhuo Junyang's legs had to be treated as well. She would probably have to stay here for a period of time. Furthermore, she was indebted to the owner of the black market. If something really happened, she would have to make a trip back. Because she had heard the news about the black market, she did not have the mood to shop anymore. She walked one round before returning to the Zhuo residence. The moment she entered, she was welcomed by the old man. "Where did you go? I thought you had snuck away." Hun Yuan let out a sigh of relief upon seeing her return. "I just went out for a walk." "What's wrong? What's the matter?" Feng Jiu said and sat down in the courtyard. "When do you plan to teach the old man Taiji fist?" He sat down and asked. Feng Jiu glanced at him and said nothing. Seeing this, the old man glared at him. "You're not trying to go back on your word, are you? You can't go back on your words. Otherwise, what else?" She raised her eyebrows and asked. "Otherwise, this old man will continue to pester you and follow you closely." Feng Jiu rolled her eyes and said, "Wait until I'm in a good mood." She got up and walked into the room. She said to Han Yuan, who was about to follow her, "I'm going to rest. Don't follow me." The old man choked and glared at her. "Didn't you say you were going to help Jun Yu's grandmother recuperate? Are you going to eat, drink, and sleep all day? Isn't this a pure waste of time?" Chapter 21:18. Seeing this, the old man was very bored and could only turn around and return to his room. However, in the middle of the night, Feng Jiu quietly went out and went to the old madam's courtyard in the east courtyard. This was what she had told her during the day. At night, she would come to treat her body. She only needed to use needles for 3 days and take medicine for a few days, and her body's illness would be cured. When Feng Jiu left the room, the old man knew. When he came out and saw that she was going to the east courtyard, he muttered and went back to sleep. The old madam left only one confidant to keep watch at the east courtyard. When she entered the courtyard, the confidant by the old madam's side retreated and stood guard outside the courtyard. When she entered the room, she saw that she was sitting on the bed with her eyes closed and a blanket covering her body. She called out, "Mistress, are you still awake?" She thought that she would sleep for a while before waking up, but from the looks of it, she had been waiting here the whole time. "I couldn't sleep, so I waited here for you," the old madam said, and gestured for her to sit down. She asked, "Did you have dinner tonight?" Feng Jiu smiled. "Yes, I went out for a walk and ate outside." Hearing this, the old madam nodded. "You are his disciple, but you are neglected like this. I should have invited you to dinner tonight." "I'm fine." She was not someone who cared about these things. "Can Junyang's leg really be cured?" the old madam asked, her gaze landing on Feng Jiu. "It can be cured, but I can't cure it because I haven't found all the medicine. It will probably take some time," Feng Jiu said as she took out the silver needles. "His leg hasn't moved for a long time. Even if it recovers, he will need to practice before he can walk again. I'm afraid he won't be able to walk in a short period of time." Hearing this, the old madam nodded and asked, "He doesn't know any medical skills. He didn't teach you medical skills, did he?" "No." Feng Jiu raised his head and looked at her with a smile in his eyes. "Actually, Master didn't teach me anything because he only left behind a strand of primordial spirit, so he couldn't teach me anything. However, he helped me open up the meridians in my body and gave me the Qing Feng sword. He also left me many secret manuals." All these years, other than the skills she had learned in her previous life, she had learned everything by herself from secret manuals. Hearing this, the old madam was slightly startled, although she had already vaguely guessed it. After all, she had said today that it was only a strand of Chu Baishan's primordial spirit that had been left behind. Naturally, it was impossible for him to teach her anything. However, just because he called her master, she was willing to help them like this. Today, there was a hidden meaning in her words. If the eldest son's family wanted to leave the Zhuo family and establish their own residence, she could help. However, she had still rejected this possibility. Speaking of which, she was being selfish. You can call me old madam from now on. You don't have to call me mistress anymore, she said. Feng Jiu was slightly surprised. He looked at her. Why? Now that I'm the mother of the Zhua family's head, wouldn't it be a mess if you call me mistress? She smiled and said, just call me old madam. Hearing this, Feng Jiu nodded. All right, then I'll help you with the acupuncture. She replied and leaned against the soft couch quietly, allowing him to help her with the acupuncture. Seeing Feng Jiu, who was dressed like a young man in green, earnestly inserting the needles, she couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded, her thoughts drifting away. Chapter 21:19. The old madam was lost in her memories and gradually fell asleep because of the acupuncture. When she opened her eyes again, Feng Jiu had already put away the silver needles. Are you done? She asked, her old voice slightly hoarse. Feng Jiu poured a cup of water. Drink some water. Your throat will feel better. As she spoke, she handed the cup of water to the old madam. Today's treatment is done. You just have to do it again tomorrow and the day after. I'll make some medicine for you to take. After a while, all the old illnesses in your body will disappear. Hearing this, the old madam nodded. Thank you. This is what I should do. She smiled and stood up. Other than this, I don't know what else I can do for you. You don't owe us anything. You've done enough for us. She patted her hand and said, it's getting late. You should go back and rest. All right, then I'll go back first. Feng Jiu said, then turned and left. Her figure flashed and quietly disappeared into the night. Mistress. The middle-aged woman outside came in and saw her mistress sitting on the soft bed. Seeing that she was awake, she asked, Mistress, do you want to rest? I can't sleep. Chat with me. She waved her hand and gestured for her to sit down and chat. Yes. The middle-aged woman walked forward and sat down. That night, the lights in the small courtyard were lit all the way until dawn. Early the next morning, Zhuo Junyue went out. He first went to the city's auctions to find out if the 3 spiritual medicines that Feng Jiu mentioned were available. He then went to the century-old medicinal shops in the city to ask around. He only returned after noon. Feng Jiu slept until noon. When she walked out of the room, she saw the old man pacing around the courtyard with a troubled look. It was rare to see the old man like this, so she asked, What's wrong? What are you doing so early in the morning? The old man glanced at her and said, What early in the morning? It's already afternoon. Only you can sleep until now. She raised her eyebrows and looked at him, who looked like he wanted to say something. She smiled and said, Do you have something to say? Why didn't he say anything? She's so bashful that I feel uncomfortable just looking at her. As she spoke, she came to the courtyard and stretched. It was rare that the old man didn't glare at her this time. Instead, he glanced at her from time to time. After hesitating for a long time, he said, This old man just received the news. There's something I have to deal with. Upon hearing this, Feng Jiu was slightly startled. That's it? Then you should go. What's there to be troubled about? Wasn't the old man afraid that you would sneak away if he left? Who knows if the Heavenly Pill building will be able to find you next time? He couldn't help but mutter as he stared at her worriedly. Feng Jiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That's my business. Haven't you heard that a monk can run away, but the temple can't? What was there to worry about? If you can't find me here, then go to the 100 River City's Heavenly Dam building. Besides, there's no need for me to avoid you, right? So, you won't go missing with the old man. When the old man heard this, his eyes lit up. Then when this old man is done, I'll go to 100 Rivers City to look for you. You'll find time to teach me Taiji Fist? Chapter 21:20. Hearing this, her eyes flashed, and she stared at Han Yuan for a while. Then, her lips curled into a strange smile. Your position in the Nebula Immortal sect is really not low. Of course. He puffed out his chest and raised his chin. Stroking his goatee, he said proudly, It's not just the Star Cloud Immortal Pill sect. Even the other 4 sects know of this old man. What's your current cultivation level? Peak Immortal Supremacy? She asked. Although Feng Jiu did not say anything, The old man stared at her. Are you looking down on this old man's cultivation level? Let me tell you, peak immortal supremacy is not a level that anyone can reach. Many old monsters have failed in the heavenly lightning refinement when they entered the immortal supremacy level. Only a few people in our generation have reached our level. Of course, we don't count those devil cultivators who don't walk the righteous path. Then you must have been stuck at peak immortal supremacy level for a long time, right? You can't advance anymore? Feng stared at him with a smile that was hard to decipher. Seeing that she looked down on him, the old man snorted. Do you think it's that easy to advance from immortal supremacy to immortal emperor? Do you know that there are very few immortal emperors in the upper reaches of the continent? Oh, very few? In other words, there are some. She nodded thoughtfully. Above immortal sage was immortal supremacy, and above immortal supremacy was immortal emperor. Her current cultivation level was at peak immortal sage, and the only immortal supremacy she had met was this old man. As for immortal emperors, she had never seen one before. Of course there are. How can there not be? Not counting the ones in the upper reaches of the continent, there are 4 immortal emperors in this continent. They are. He was about to say it when he saw that she was waiting for him to continue. He laughed. I'm not telling you. After waiting for a long time, he did not continue. In the end, he laughed softly. She could not help but twitch her mouth. Didn't you say that if I wanted to investigate, I wouldn't be able to find out? She looked at him and said, Don't you have something to do? Why aren't you going? How about this? When this old man sees you again, this old man will tell you. I'll be leaving first. You can go back and tell that blockhead Junyu. When the time comes, this old man will directly go to your heavenly pill house to find you. I won't come here. He knew that by the time he was done, she wouldn't be here. See you then. She nodded. Seeing this, the old man felt relieved and left. It seemed that she would not hide from him. After he finished his business, he would go to the 100 River City to see what the heavenly pill building was like. After the old man left, Feng Jiu went outside and found a maidservant waiting outside the courtyard. She asked the maidservant to bring some food over. After a simple meal, she was about to go to Zhuo Junyang's courtyard when Zhuo Junyue came in. Where is he? Zhuo Junyue came to the courtyard, but did not see the old man. He could not help but feel strange. The old man has something to do, so he left first. He asked me to inform you. Feng Jiu said as she walked out. Let's go. To your. Chapter 21:21. That's normal. Feng Jiu did not even look back as she continued to walk forward. She only slowed down her pace and said, Do you think that kind of spiritual medicine is so easy to find? Do you think you can find it in a random medicine shop or an auction? As she spoke, she glanced at Zhuo Junyue, who was walking up to her side. Then what should we do? Without those 3 medicines, Junyang's legs. He lowered his gaze to hide the worry in his eyes. Although we don't have those 3 medicines now, we can still find them. Before that, I can use silver needles to unblock the veins in his legs. Once we find those 3 medicines, we can use them as medicine. She walked leisurely, 1 step at a time. Zhuo Junyue did not say anything else as he quietly followed beside her. When the 2 of them reached the courtyard, they saw Zhuo Junyang sitting in the courtyard, basking in the sun and reading a book. Feng Jiu noticed that he was holding a medical book and raised her eyebrows. You're interested in medicine? Hearing that, Zhuo Junyang closed the medical book in his hands and looked up at her with a smile. Being ill for a long time makes one a doctor. I want to read more books. Perhaps I can find a cure. You've been cultivating at home all this time. Have you thought about which sect you want to join after your legs are healed? She sat down at the stone table and waved at Zhuo Junyue, indicating for him to roll up Zhuo Junyang's pants. Zhuo Junyue went forward and crouched beside the wheelchair to help his younger brother roll up his pants, revealing his knees. Because of my legs, I've been sitting in a wheelchair at home and rarely go out. If my legs can really stand up, I don't want to join any sect. I want to go out and gain experience. I want to travel around and see the outside world. A glimmer of anticipation appeared in his eyes as he looked at his older brother and smiled. Big brother, When you go out again, can you bring me along? Zhua Junhua looked up at him and nodded. Hearing that, Fengjiu smiled. She narrowed her eyes and said half-jokingly, "The outside world is very dangerous. Don't talk about you. From what I know, your big brother has only been hit once, and it was that kind of cough." Zhua Junyue's ears reddened. He coughed lightly and interrupted Fengjiu's words. He turned to look at her and happened to meet her teasing smile. He could not help but feel embarrassed. He looked away and said, "Can I start the needle now?" Zhua Junyang couldn't help but feel curious when he saw this. What had happened to his big brother? How could he not let Fengjiu say it? Furthermore, he had such a strange expression on his face. "What's the rush? Let's chat for a while," Fengjiu said unhurriedly with a smile on his face. "When I passed by West Street yesterday, I smelled the aroma of the 8 treasure duck in that restaurant and suddenly felt like eating it. What should I do?" The corners of Zhua Junyue and Zhua Junyang's mouths twitched when they heard that. So she was craving for the 8 treasure duck. "I'll go buy it." Zhua Junyue stood up and walked out. After his brother left, Zhua Junyang couldn't help but ask with a smile, "What did my big brother get hit by? I think he looks a little uncomfortable." Fengjiu let out a low chuckle. Her chuckle sounded a little wretched, and coupled with the strange expression on her face, it didn't quite match her image of a handsome young man dressed in green robes. However, in Zhua Junyang's eyes, he only felt that her expression was ever-changing, and it was very novel. Chapter 21-22. If they hadn't pointed it out, he wouldn't have been able to tell that the green-clothed youth was a woman. She had the carefree and unrestrained aura of a man. Her entire body exuded an aura of confidence that soared through the skies. He found it unbelievable. How could a woman imitate a man's actions, expressions, and words so well? Fengjiu narrowed her eyes, and her eyes were full of joy. "Since he went to buy the 8 treasure duck for me, I'd better not say anything about it. It's better not to say anything." She shook her head and said with a smile. She took out a silver needle and pierced it into his knee without saying a word. The needle didn't hurt, but when the needle was turned, there was a sore and itchy feeling deep in his knee, in his flesh, tendons, and bones. Just as he was thinking about it, he heard her voice. "How do you feel?" Fengjiu looked up at her. "I didn't feel anything when the needle went in, but when it was turned, it was a little sore and itchy." He said honestly, but he felt a little strange. He had tried acupuncture on himself before, but why didn't he feel as sore and itchy as she did? It's good to feel something. As she spoke, she twirled the silver needle in her hand. Then, she pierced the second needle and continued to twirl it. Although it looked like an ordinary acupuncture point, there was a thin strand of spiritual energy in her hand that passed through the silver needle and entered his foot. While he was being treated, Zhua Junyue went to buy the 8 treasure duck. In the East House, the head of the Zhua family seemed to have encountered some problems and was gathering the elders in the house to discuss. The West House didn't know what was going on in the East House. The people there didn't say anything, and they didn't ask. "I bought the 8 treasure duck." Zhua Junyue entered the yard and looked at Fengjiu, who was chatting. At the same time, he handed over an oiled paper bag. It smells so good." Smelling the fragrance, Fengjiu narrowed his eyes and took it. He said to them, "Then I'll go back first." With that, he ignored them and left with the 8 treasure duck. "Big brother, Fengjiu's medical skills are really amazing. This time I believe him." He smiled and looked at his big brother. Zhua Junhua nodded. "Her medical skills are impressive." He paused for a moment before asking, "Did she perform acupuncture on you? How do you feel?" "Actually, I've used silver needles before, but I didn't feel anything. But just now, when she used the silver needles, my legs felt sore and itchy." He told him about what had happened and asked, "Big brother, why do you think her medical skills are so good?" "Back then, we went to a lot of people, and they all said that my leg was incurable. After so many years, she was the only one who said that it could be cured." Zhua Junyue revealed a rare smile and said, "She said she's called the ghost doctor. As long as she wants to treat it, there's no illness that she can't cure." While the two brothers were chatting, Fengjiu returned to the small courtyard and entered his room. He took out the spirit wine and ate the 8 treasure duck. In the second half of the night, she went to the old madam's courtyard again. She left after administering the needles, and during the day, she helped with Junyang with his treatment. Chapter 21-23. Feng Jiu looked at her and paused. Old madam, forgive me for asking, but does the Zhua family's old master treat you well? She had been here for a few days, but she had never seen the old master. Moreover, it seemed that the old master rarely came to her courtyard. Hearing this, the old madam was slightly startled. Then, she smiled and said, "He treats me very well. Otherwise, why would he marry me back then?" Speaking of this, she sighed softly in her heart and said, "Speaking of which, I have let him down. All these years, there has been a knot in my heart that has not been untied. Ever since my 2 sons grew up, I hid in the backyard and rarely showed myself. When he saw me like this, he also came to my place less often. He only came over during the holidays. It has been a long time. Old madam's body has been nursed back to health. Many times, one's mood can also affect one's body. Old madam, why don't you try to open your heart? Instead of always meditating here, why don't you go out more often?" She suggested softly. Knowing her good intentions, the old madam nodded and smiled kindly. "Yes, I will. I've been here for a few days. Old madam's body is fine, but Junyang's legs lack 3 types of medicine. I may be preparing to leave. I will come back after I find the 3 types of medicine." She spoke slowly and bowed to her. "Old madam, I will go back first." With that, she turned and left. She returned to her room to rest. The next morning, she went out and went to the medicine shop in the city. Because she had been busy concocting pills for the 2 of them, she did not have time to go out. It was a good time to see what kind of news the black market had sent. The shopkeeper of the medicine shop had been waiting for Feng Jiu for 2 days. When he saw her arrive, he could not help but welcome her with joy. "Master, you're here. Please come in." He quickly invited her into the inner room. The medicine boy outside was stunned. He did not understand how the cyan-robed young master had become the shopkeeper's master. "Master, the news arrived at noon yesterday. We have been waiting for you," the shopkeeper said and handed the document over. Feng Jiu raised his hand to wipe away the watermark on the document before opening it. The more he read, the more solemn his expression became. He did not expect that the black market would encounter such trouble this time. Furthermore, the situation of the master of the black market was not good. There were already people from the black market who went to the Heavenly Dan building to look for her. She put the items away and said to the shopkeeper, "I might leave tomorrow. If there's any news, you don't have to send it to the Zhua family. Also, send a message back and tell them to buy the 3 spirit herbs." She instructed the shopkeeper to tell him about the 3 spirit herbs before she walked out. She had the teleportation scroll with her, so she could return quickly. Therefore, she planned to leave tomorrow. Today, she would deal with the matters at hand first. As she walked back to the Zhua residence, she saw that the main gate of the Zhua residence was surrounded by people. Moreover, the people surrounding the Zhua residence were very aggressive, as if they did not dare to leave the matter at that. This made her, who was about to go back, stop in her tracks and stand in an inconspicuous corner to watch. She thought to herself, "Who are these people? Why are they crowding around the Zhua family's doorstep? Zhua Zhenglin, come out. Let him come out. If you don't come out, don't blame us for being impolite. Don't hide in there in the future, and we can't do anything to you. If you don't come out, we will break in." Chapter 21-24. There were quite a number of people crowding around, and the noise was loud and noisy. Everyone was shouting one sentence after another, and it was as if they were in a wet market. She did not hear what was going on, and only saw the 2 groups of people beginning to fight. For a moment, the sound of swords clashing against each other and angry shouts filled the air. She was a little startled at the sight. They really did fight over the slightest disagreement. However, the powers of both sides seemed to be about the same. Furthermore, this was in front of the Zhua mansion's gates. No matter how she looked at it, that group should be the one at a disadvantage. However, just as she was thinking about this, she suddenly noticed an inconspicuous old man dressed in gray robes among the group. His powers were even higher than the master of the Zhua family, Zhua Zhenglin's. Just as she was thinking about this, she saw the two of them begin to fight. Once the two of them began to fight, a powerful spiritual energy flow and coercion surged in the surroundings, causing the people who had been fighting to retreat and stop. When powerful cultivators fought, the other party's powers were enough to intimidate them. How could they possibly have the ability to continue fighting? Furthermore, the leaders of both sides had already begun to fight. Regardless of the outcome, there would be a way to resolve this. After the gray-robed old man had struck out with his palm, he changed his movements and charged forward. The wind from his palm whistled through the air as he struck out. His sharp and cold eyes were as sharp as swords as he stared at Zhuo Zhenglin, and his attacks were merciless. The two of them exchanged a few blows, and Zhuo Zhenglin's expression gradually turned serious. The other party's powers were higher than his. If they continued to fight, he was afraid that he would not be a match for him. If he was defeated in front of the Zhuo mansion's gates, the Zhuo family would become the laughingstock of the city. Zhuo Zhenglin secretly gritted his teeth at the thought of this and increased his powers once again, using all of his powers to deal with the old man. With a wave of his hand, a swirling air blade emitted a whistling sound as it shot towards the old man. The old man laughed icily and easily dispelled Zhuo Zhenglin's attack with a wave of his hand. He then waved his hand to attack and closed in on Zhuo Zhenglin step by step. His attacks were filled with murderous intent, as if he wanted to take Zhuo Zhenglin's life on the spot. The murderous aura that was whistling towards him was cold and vicious. Zhuo Zhenglin's heart tightened, and he braced himself to deal with it. Feng Jiu, who was watching this scene from the corner of the street, could not help but shake his head. The master of the Zhuo family was obviously no match for the old man. At this moment, she saw the gray-robed elder condense a stream of air with a wave of his hand. That stream of air formed a powerful pressure that filled the air between his hands, surging with the movement of his hand. His pair of sinister eyes stared at Zhuo Zhenglin like a venomous snake, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. In the blink of an eye, he attacked with the attack in his hand, attacking Zhuo Zhenglin at a speed that left no time for anyone to cover their ears. Chapter 21-25. Feng Jiu frowned when she saw this. She was a little far away, so it was impossible for her to save him. However, if he was hit by this attack, he would be seriously injured even if he did not die. If he fell, the Zhuo family would fall into internal strife, and the people outside who were eyeing them covetously would not let them off so easily. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly shot out and instantly pulled Zhuo Yulin away from the danger at the speed of light. At that moment, she thought, could it be the Zhuo family's old master? However, when she took a closer look, she could not help but be astonished. Her eyes widened as she stared at the person who, in her opinion, could not possibly have appeared there to save Zhuo Zhenglin. That person was dressed in plain and unassuming clothes. However, at this moment, his aura had changed slightly as he stood there. She was not the only one who was astonished. Everyone in the Zhuo family's East Mansion stared in astonishment at the person who had suddenly appeared to save Zhuo Zhenglin. At this moment, everyone in the East Mansion was shocked and astonished. How could it be him? How could... Zhuo Chuwei supported his younger brother, who was staring at him in astonishment. After stabilizing his body, he asked, "Are you all right, big brother? How could you have saved him in such a situation? Even he could not withstand that attack. How could his unassuming and ordinary brother save him so easily? Could it be that he was even more powerful than he was? Could it be that he had been hiding his true strength all these years?" At this moment, he noticed that there was a stream of air surging around his elder brother's body. This stream of air was emitted from his elder brother's body when he saved him earlier. However, in just an instant, that stream of air quietly dissipated as if it had never appeared. When he saw this, he was shocked and could only feel that it was unbelievable in a corner outside. Fengjiu leaned against the wall and watched this scene with interest. Who said that Zhuo Wei was ordinary? Who said that he was not outstanding in any way? He reckoned that in the entire Zhuo clan, Zhuo Wei was the truly powerful one. He had been able to conceal all of his powers and only reveal his inconspicuous cultivation level. Furthermore, no one in the Zhuo family had noticed him for so many years. This showed just how outstanding his powers were. Furthermore, it was not just his powers that were outstanding. Even his ability to conceal his aura was the best she had ever seen. For someone like him, not only had the Zhuo family failed to discover him for so many years, even Han Yuanzi had failed to see through him. She had been here for several days, but she still couldn't tell that he was a capable person. This kind of person, at that moment, overflowed with a suppressive aura that filled the sky above everyone else. At that moment, she seemed to see her master's shadow and domineering aura on him. However, from what had happened today, she also knew that his temperament was absolutely outstanding. Furthermore, he did not care about fame or fortune. Otherwise, given his strength and cultivation, he would have been able to dominate a region. However, he had quietly become an ordinary person in the Zhuo family. It was said that a great hermit lived in the city. After such a long time, this was the first time she had seen someone who clearly possessed outstanding strength and the aura of a superior, yet had chosen to live as an ordinary person. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.